Where were we? How did we get on that topic? It was the sex offender thing. It was crime. It was
Right,
whatever.
and I took us into the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. See, we're bilingual. We can go either way, right? Okay. So now, with all that said, I mean, that covers a lot for just 20180 and we're Lovins Valley, right? Anything else? You think you?
You know, I'm going to hit on this again just for a second.
Sure.
If you go back to the
I can edit it out. Go ahead.
people on the right and people from
We're
the
going to have a
left.
blooper reel also. So at the end, I'm going to reserve 30 seconds for a blooper reel. So if you want to do something funny, go ahead, and then I'll add it in the bloopers.
There are people on the right and people on the left that every now and then are calling for a constitutional convention for this or that. It never flies because of the high bar that the framers set for being able to do that. Everybody always thinks that they represent everybody else.
Yeah.
I would suggest to you that there was one thing that you could get both sides together on, and that is redefine the Commerce Clause of the Constitution back to what it was originally intended to do, and that was a lot for the free flow of business across state lines. Okay? Right now, it has been twisted in like 55 different directions.
Painful. It's painful.
The right and the left have both used it for things it was never intended to be. And there's so many of these national issues.
Yeah.
I mean, abortion is settled on the Commerce Clause.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's bad law.
Yeah.
It was, when you go into law schools, when they teach John Marshall, they talk about, what his point of view in this was. Yeah. And he's the father of constitutional law, the way it's done in this country. He's a very good Virginian. And it's not the way it was intended. It's been hijacked, for the lack of a better term.
Well, I mean, the reality, constitutionally, there's defined powers of the government. And the reality is, if you look at about 90% of what there goes a motorcycle. If you, 90% of what the federal government does now is not a defined power within the Constitution, right? I mean, and that's really, one of the biggest issues, right? So nowhere in there did the founding fathers tax one group of people and give the money to somebody else for no
started
benefit.
out at the state and got hijacked. That's again the term I use by the federal government.
No, absolutely, right. And so, I mean, that's where. So, I'm a big Convention of the State supporter, right? Because personally, I think our constitutional republic is done for, right? So we pay some lip service to freedom of press. We don't even care about religion anymore. We're fighting like hell to keep our Second Amendment rights.
I would suggest to you that the wrong people are considering religion anymore. It used to be that religion was always set aside as something that was very personal, and the government was not going to get involved in religion. But now we find that the pendulum has swung back the other way. Yeah,
and we talk about our Fourth Amendment rights of illegal search and seizure, yet NSA collects more data on you than you can possibly imagine. And I'm dumbfounded. I hear conservatives go, no, we need to do this to protect ourselves. No, we don't, right? As a former guy who worked in the intel community for almost 30 years, there is zero reason to do anything without a warrant. It's that simple, right? We know who the bad guys are, and we know who the bad guys associate with. And so, yes, it's a pain. It takes time. But that's the whole point of our constitutional republic, is so that we don't have a tyranny of the majority, which is functionally sort of what we're living in now, right? The government, they can do anything at any time they want. Push back, knock yourself out. What are you going to do? Go to court? Right? It's nothing, right? 10th Amendment, right? The States' Rights Amendment. I mean, the national government is just trampling over that as well.
There are no states' rights.
No, absolutely, right?
I would suggest that when the states were able to appoint appoint the senators, then that's the missing piece between the balance right now between the federal and the state. Is the state has nobody looking out for them in Washington, the way the framers intended.
Hey, and if I can get a free phone from the federal government, the hell with the state. I don't need the state, right? I mean, and that has been at the detriment of the state, right? Where the federal government has just come down and basically provides every possible service. I mean, you have the guy I like, and not to go down this road, but I love Bernie Sanders, right? So, and here's why I love him. He is just such an extreme socialist, and he tells you, right? There's no hidden agenda whatsoever. He tells you, I'm a socialist. I believe that the government should own the means of production.
That is absolutely consistent, though, with President Obama. Because
absolutely.
if you want to give somebody props, You're always trying to find something good in someone.
Yeah.
President Obama has been the exact same person he was when he was a state legislature,
Yeah.
U.S. Senator. He's absolutely predictable, almost all the way down the line. There's no hidden agenda.
No, absolutely.
Everyone's always saying, well, his real hidden agendas. He doesn't need a hidden
No,
agenda.
he
He
doesn't.
doesn't already know.
Yeah.
Now, that's why I like Bernie Sanders. And
Yeah.
I come across Facebook friends all the time. Bernie Sanders this, Bernie Sanders this.
Yeah.
If you are a Democrat in 20180, I beg you to vote for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that would make me the happiest person on earth. Why? Because there are 10 Republicans that can beat Bernie Sanders without even getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, the bottom line is I don't think Hillary can be president from a jail cell, right? And so,
If there's any justice.
hopefully she'll be there shortly, right? But yeah, no, I agree. And, yeah, and I'm always amazed at when people say, well, Obama, he's not what he campaigned as. I'm thinking, like, did you listen to what he said?
Yes, exactly.
So when you say, I'm going to fundamentally transform America, from what? To what? Right? In other words, what problems did we need to fix? Right? And then what were you going to do about it? I mean, he said it over and over again. He governs no differently than he campaigned. I'm just dumbfounded at the number of people who say
during
that.
the last campaign with Mitt Romney, I thought it was interesting that they were willing to give President Obama the benefit of the doubt that he would actually do what he says while he's campaigning. With Mitt Romney, it was the war on women. Oh, he's going to roll back abortion. He's going to roll back this. He's going to change it. But you know what? And I always say this: Democrat, Republican, Independent, Bernie Sanders, whatever they've done in the past is what they're going to do in the future. They're not going to change midstream. There's no real hint of a president who ran for office and then got in and did something different than what he did before.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney would have come in. He was moderate to slightly. He was a little bit on the right side. He was not as conservative as a lot of us on the right would like for him to have been. But having said that, after 8 years of this, he was essentially 90 or 45 degrees off of what we've got, and that would have been much more preferable.
Yeah. Romney wasn't my top choice either, but the one thing I did like about Romney, I did think he was fairly conservative, not as conservative as I would like him to be, and that's all right? I mean, we don't have to agree 100% of the time, right? Can I get a 51%, right? Can I get that, right? But the reality is, I thought he was just a decent human being, right? And contrast that, I think, to so many other people who are running, for the presidency, right? And more specifically on the left, that they're just not decent human beings. I mean, I don't think Hillary Clinton is a decent human being.
There are a lot of people who know her way back to Arkansas before they ever left the state, who can tell you horror stories.
Yeah. And the same with Chris Christie. I don't like Chris Christie. I call him Krispy Kreme, Governor Krispy Kreme, right? I just don't think his kind of my way or the highway kind of thing. He's just overly abusive, and I think he's by far worse than anything Trump says, right? So at least Trump is doing something.
I like the way he saved the state retirement system early in his administration. He essentially went to the unions and pushed them back and said, that's not the way we're going to do it anymore. This is the way we're going to do it because it's the only way we can save it. Yeah. And he did that. That was great.
Yeah.
Probably from Superstorm Sandy on, and when he realized that he could actually have a national following and he might actually be considered, then he became wishy-washy.
No, absolutely. Right.
And
the reality is that's why people like Donald Trump, right? So regardless of what you think of him politically, a guy can make a decision, right? And two, he speaks. I mean, the guy's a multi-billionaire, and a lot of people consider him one of us, kind of thing. Why? Because the reality is he says stuff that almost every single person is thinking at the time, right? But he doesn't whitewash it with political ease, right? He doesn't pretend to, and he's not that guy. He's never been that guy. So why anybody would think that somehow he would become this polished politician, vice the guy on The Apprentice? I'm dumbfounded, right? Why would you think he would be any different?
In my article last week in the Purcellville Gazette, in my column.
Hey, that's a shameless plug for his article in the Purcellville Gazette.
And if you want to know what's going on with that, you can follow me on Twitter at FrankM204. But I point out that my opinion when I wrote the article was that he would not be the Republican nominee. My theory was that somewhere along the line he's going to get tripped up so bad. But then the whole thing with Megyn Kelly and some
Yeah.
of his insensitive remarks toward
Yeah.
women came out, which anybody else would be lying dead in the
Yeah.
gutter right now from a self-inflicted wound. And he just shook it off and continued on with the whole concept was that nobody can be politically correct enough to be acceptable to the mainstream media.
And the reality is, there's a lot of people that just like to hear it. Now, the bottom line is, I'm a Ted Cruz man. Matter of fact, I'm on the hook to get a lot of signatures so he can get on the ballot here in Virginia. Just got it the other day, and I'll be hitting young people up here shortly. But I'm a Ted Cruz man, right? But the thing is, and the reality is, I like Donald Trump, right? But here's the deal: he's not, my kind of conservative, right? So far as I'm concerned, you say anything positive about Obamacare, right, or single payer system. Not so heck with Obamacare, but single payer system, right? So there's a flaw in your logic, right, as far as what the proper role of government is. But that single payer, we don't want a commercial monopoly, and we don't want the government involved as well. We want a pluralistic, competitive environment to drive down costs. It proves it every time, right? And so when you say stuff like that, again, I don't think he's going to end up getting a nomination. But I'm tickled pink that there was, how many are there, 17, 48? And you're not running for sure. And I vow as well not to run. Okay. So we're two down. But anyway, I'm tickled pink that there are 17 people or whatever running, right? Because I want as many topics covered as possible, right, across the spectrum, right? And that includes, whether it's immigration, whether it's healthcare, whether it's abortion, whether it's a wall at the border, whether it's, going on with ISIS, right? There is no, there's no downside to having the conversation. And there's 17 different conversations going on.
I've made the comment, and I've posted it, that there are 10 Republicans on the ticket that would be better than anyone who's currently running on the Democrat side. And having said that, not knowing when this particular segment will air, since the vice president, since Uncle Joe is considering throwing his hat in, I'm including him in that there are 10 Republicans that would be any better than Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, or Joe Biden.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to cut that down to 7 if Elizabeth Warren throws in. Because to me, she is the most formidable, because she comes at you with positions from the left, but she can argue them very intelligently, intellectually. She's not going to come back and say that my opinion is my opinion only because I don't like women, or I'm against this, or I'm against that. She's going to give you a very defined logic. Now, I don't agree with her, I don't think on anything. Yeah. But to me, she was a stronger candidate than any of the three.
So that's really interesting. So I agree with you, right? So I was somewhat dumbfounded when Elizabeth Warren said, if Hillary's running, I'm not running, right? I'm going like, really? Because you really, really want it bad, and you're much more of a socialist than she is, right? But I can't help but believe that she's thinking about it now as she sees Hillary implode, right? Because she's got it all, right? Mm-hmm. She's Bernie Sanders in a dress. Yep. Right, and so when you got the old fart. I mean, how old is Bernie Sanders? He's like 95, maybe 99 or something, right? Where you have this Elizabeth Warren come in, exact same philosophy, right? Exact same view of government.
Much more polished and intellectual,
and much more polished, right? And a female, right? So Hillary's been trying to get this thing. Vote for me, I would be the first woman.
And like the president, she comes from academia. Remember, she's referred to as faux Kahanas because she was able to get that job by saying that she had a lot of Native American blood, and it turns out it was very little.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to go back to Bruce Jenner, right? So I don't care if you're wearing a dress, you're still a guy, right? So not to even go down this road, but I'm just going to make the following comment right here, right? So we can't just make up definition of words, right? So that's why for me the way we spell Squircle is with a C forever. If you spell it with a K, it's nothing but Ebonics, right? Likewise, right? If in your body, in every cell, you have 2 X chromosomes, right? You're female, right? If you have an X and a Y, How do I get a Y in here?
I am going
Right?
to. I'm going to break it.
You're
down.
a guy.
I'm going to make it even more simple. Okay. I'm going to take your.
If you stand when you pee, you're a guy.
No, because in Europe, young men
Yeah.
are being taught otherwise.
Just what?
But I will make it even more simple, okay? And I'll look you right in the eye when I say this. You are the way that you shipped from the factory. You can do all the modifications you want.
No,
All these
absolutely.
aftermarket products can be
Yeah.
added or removed. And the thing is, and I'm going to get religious on you, I'm sorry, but when you return to the factory that created you, you're going to be welcomed back in the same state that you shipped in. Okay, so if you live your life as an opposite, then this little tiny little sliver of eternity that we spend here on earth, you're still going to have to go back and be what you were before.
And my big thing about it, which I think is funny, listen, if you have an X and Y chromosome, and you it's like the woman who faked being black for the NAACP thing. So the reality is, if you have an affinity toward that lifestyle, whether it's a culture, or whether it's, traditionally female roles and dress, really nobody cares, right? For the most part, right? But, to try to change what you are, right? So for Bruce Jenner to come out and say, well, I'm a woman. No, it's like you're a guy, right? Because you have a Y chromosome. And you prefer to dress and act and all this other stuff, as a female, right? I mean, and you could say that about anything, right? But this saying, oh, I'm a woman. No, you're a guy that just has more in common.
One of the most beloved characters on television for 12 years, portrayed by Jamie Farr, was Corporal Klinger on MASH.
No, absolutely, yeah.
So Corporal Klinger wore a dress for roughly 9 of those years.
Yeah.
Okay, and no one, because he didn't change who he was.
Right.
It was who he was. He was a obviously before he got shipped to Korea, he was a sort of a shyster, kind of street guy and everything, always looking for an angle, and that was his angle. But now we're getting more serious. We're going to say that I can identify as a African American. I can identify as a man or a woman, or if I could come into work Elizabeth Warren wants to identify as a Native American. Yeah. I've got a problem with that, because then you've got no you've got no pillars. You've got nothing to measure against, because now everything is in flux.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And it doesn't help.
No, absolutely. And again, I agree that if you have an affinity toward that ethnicity or lifestyle, regardless of what the lifestyle is, that's one thing. But to claiming to be an Indian, right, with quote unquote Indian blood in you, right, and you reap the benefits of that, right, that's just flat out fraudulent, right? And it's the same thing with that woman. Now the reality is, what's funny is I have no problem with a white woman running local chapter of the NAACP, right? I saw nothing wrong with it, right? Until she just faked being black the whole time, right? And the reality is,
seemed to hold it against Michael Jackson.
No, so yeah. We see where that got him, right?